Ever get frustrated when, like, an app is just clunky or a website makes you jump through hoops?
Ugh, yeah.
Today, we're going to kind of delve into that world. It's the world of agile design and UX to understand, like, how are those frustrations avoided?
Okay.
So we're taking a deep dive into some university course materials.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, they're on Agile Development and UI UX Design from Gujarat Technological University.
Cool.
Yeah, think of it as a crash course. It's like how software is built in today's fast-paced tech world.
That sounds pretty relevant.
It is. We're even going to decode intriguing concepts like sprints,
Oh, I love spring.
user stories,
Hmm.
and, wait for it, code smells.
Oh,
Yeah, get ready, because this is where it gets really
it
interesting.
really is fascinating stuff. These materials offer a glimpse behind the curtain of how tech companies are creating software that not only works, but actually delights users.
Okay, so let's jump right in. The course materials start by contrasting the traditional waterfall method with Agile.
Okay.
Imagine you're designing a car. Waterfall would be like spending months, maybe years,
Yeah.
planning every little detail.
Wow.
Yeah. Engine specs, seat fabric, cup holder placement, like before you even pick up a wrench.
Oh, wow. Right. And that's the problem. Waterfall is so linear and rigid, like following a strict recipe.
Okay.
But the world of software is constantly changing.
Yeah.
Agile, on the other hand, is all about adapting on the fly, like taking in user feedback and delivering value in shorter bursts.
So Agile is more like building a car in stages,
Yeah.
testing it out after each step to make sure you're on the right track.
Hmm.
And if, like, the steering wheel feels weird, you can tweak it before you've built the entire car around it.
Exactly. Agile breaks down development into these sprints,
Okay.
which are short periods of focused work. The document specifically mentions frameworks like Scrum and extreme programming, which incorporate really cool practices like pair programming,
Oh, wow.
where two developers literally work side by side on the same code.
Wow, that sounds intense. Okay, so we've got the Agile approach down, but what exactly makes for, like, good software design?
That's a great question. These materials highlight 5 key criteria: usability, maintainability, scalability, security, and overall user experience.
Wait, overall user experience.
Yes.
So it's not just about making something that works, but something that, like, feels good to use.
Exactly. Think about an app that's technically sound but has a confusing interface.
Oh, yeah.
You might get frustrated and abandon it.
Great.
Agile recognizes that functionality and user experience have to go hand in hand.
Makes sense.
In fact, that's a major reason why Agile methodologies emphasize constant feedback loops,
Okay,
so you can catch those usability issues early on.
makes sense. Now, speaking of user experience, the materials delve into this really interesting concept called emotional design.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. They actually break down user experience into 2 main components:
Yeah.
usefulness and emotional impact.
That's a crucial distinction. It's not enough for software to just be functional. It needs to evoke positive feelings in the user.
Oh, okay.
Think about those apps that make you smile just to use them.
I know, right?
That's emotional design in action.
Yeah.
It plays a huge role in how users perceive and engage with software.
It's like the difference between, like, a bland, functional office building and a beautifully designed space that makes you feel inspired and creative.
Exactly.
Both might get the job done, but one definitely leaves you feeling better at the end of the day.
And this is where Agile shines. It constantly incorporates user feedback,
Yeah.
allowing designers to tweak those emotional design elements throughout the process.
Okay.
Speaking of which, these materials include a really cool funnel model to visualize the Agile UX process.
Oh, tell me more about that. Is it like those sales funnels I always hear marketers talking about?
It is similar in that it guides you through the process. It starts with envisioning and speculating at the top,
Okay.
then moves down through various stages like exploring, testing, and adapting
Right.
until you reach closing at the bottom. It visually captures the iterative nature of Agile UX. You're constantly testing, gathering feedback, and refining your designs as you move through each stage of the funnel.
So it's not a straight line to the finish line. It's more like a winding path with lots of checkpoints along the way to make sure you're still heading in the right direction.
Precisely. And that's why Agile UX is so effective at creating truly user-centered products.
Now, one thing that always gives me the chills when it comes to software development is testing.
Oh, yeah.
It feels like that moment of truth where you find out if all your hard work actually pays off.
Mm-hmm.
But these materials seem to suggest that Agile has a different approach to testing.
Right.
It's not just this dreaded final hurdle, right?
You hit the nail on the head. In Agile, testing isn't a separate phase tacked on at the end.
Okay.
It's baked into the entire process. They even talk about test-driven development, or TDD, where you write the test before you even write a single line of code.
Wait, wouldn't that be like writing a movie review before the film is even made?
Uh-huh.
How does that work in practice?
It's all about clarifying your goals from the start. You define the expected outcome first,
Okay.
then write the code to meet those expectations. It's like having a blueprint for your code,
Okay.
ensuring that each piece fits perfectly into the overall structure.
So you're basically setting yourself up for success by thinking through the end goal before you even start building.
Yes,
That's actually pretty clever.
it is, and it helps catch errors early on,
Okay.
leading to higher quality code and ultimately a better user experience.
Right.
Remember, Agile is all about delivering value in small, manageable chunks.
Yeah.
With TDD, you're constantly testing and refining, ensuring that every piece of the puzzle fits perfectly.
Okay, so far we've tackled the Agile philosophy, the importance of user experience, and even this mind-bending concept of TDD.
Right.
Now, I'm ready for the next challenge.
Yeah.
The source material dives into something called solid principles. Now, don't get me wrong, I love a good solid foundation, but this sounds a bit intimidating. Can you break it down for me?
Don't worry, solid principles are actually quite straightforward.
Really?
Yeah. Think of them as guidelines for building a really well-organized, maintainable house.
Okay.
Each letter in SOLID stands for a different principle. Single responsibility, open-closed, list-off substitution, interface segregation, and dependency inversion.
Wow. Sorry.
It's basically a set of rules for creating code that is easy to understand, modify, and extend.
Okay, so let's break down those principles one by one.
Ah.
I'm particularly intrigued by this single responsibility idea.
Okay.
It sounds like a good life philosophy, actually.
It does.
But how does it apply to code?
It means that each part of your code should have one and only one specific job.
Okay.
Think about those multi-tools with a million different attachments.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes it's better to have a dedicated screwdriver instead of one that also tries to be a saw, a knife, and a bottle opener all at once. Right?
That's a great analogy.
Huh.
I can definitely see how having code that's focused on doing one thing well would be much easier to manage and maintain.
Exactly.
So if single responsibility is about keeping things tidy and focused, what does open-closed mean in this context?
Oh, okay.
Does it have something to do with Windows?
Not quite. It means your code should be open for extension,
Okay.
but closed for modification.
Right.
Imagine you've got a beautiful working lamp. You should be able to change the lampshade without rewiring the entire thing.
Oh, okay.
With the open-closed principle, you can add new features without messing with the core code that's already working smoothly.
That makes so much sense. It's like having a modular system where you can swap out components without breaking the whole thing.
Exactly.
Now the next one, Liskov substitution, sounds a bit like a tongue twister. What's the gist of that principle?
Think of it like this. If you have a recipe for a chocolate cake,
Okay.
you should be able to substitute dark chocolate for milk chocolate without ending up with a completely different dessert.
Okay.
In coding terms,
Yeah.
it means that objects in your code should be replaceable with instances of their subtypes
Okay.
without altering the correctness of the program.
Okay, so it's about making sure that your code can handle different variations of things without causing, like, unexpected glitches.
Yes.
Now, how about interface segregation? That one sounds pretty intense.
This one is all about giving specific tools to specific workers.
Okay.
You wouldn't give a carpenter a set of dental instruments, right?
Right.
In code, this principle means that you should design your interfaces so that clients don't have to depend on methods they don't use.
Okay.
It keeps things clean and efficient, avoiding unnecessary clutter.
So it's about tailoring the tools to the specific task at hand,
Exactly.
avoiding those overwhelming Swiss Army knife scenarios. All right, we're down to the last one, dependency inversion. This sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It might sound complex,
Yeah.
but the idea is pretty simple.
Okay. High-level modules shouldn't depend on low-level modules. Both should depend on abstractions.
Okay.
Abstractions shouldn't depend on details. Details should depend on abstractions.
Okay. So lots of abstractions.
Yes. Think of it like this. You shouldn't have to know how a car engine works to be able to drive.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You just need to know how to use the steering wheel and pedals,
Right.
which are the abstractions that allow you to interact with the complex engine underneath.
So it's about creating clear layers of abstraction so that different parts of the code can work together without being overly reliant on each other's inner workings.
Exactly. And all of these solid principles, when applied together, make your code much more robust, maintainable, and adaptable to change,
Okay.
which is absolutely critical in the fast-paced world of agile development.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about how these principles actually come to life in the development process.
Okay.
The source material mentions something called user stories.
Which sounds a lot more human-centered than all this talk about code and principles.
Yeah.
What are user stories, and how do they fit into the agile framework?
User stories are a fantastic way to bridge the gap between what users want
Okay.
and what developers build.
Right.
They're short, simple descriptions of a feature from the perspective of the user,
Okay.
written in a specific format. As a type of user, I want to do something so that I can achieve some goal.
Okay.
It keeps everyone focused on the ultimate goal,
Right.
creating software that solves real user needs.
So instead of just listing a bunch of technical features, you're starting with the human element.
Exactly.
I could definitely see how that would lead to a more user-friendly product.
And it's incredibly collaborative.
Oh, cool.
Developers, designers, and stakeholders all work together to define these user stories,
Okay.
ensuring that everyone is on the same page about what needs to be built and why.
That's a great way to foster a shared understanding and avoid those situations where the developers build something amazing,
Right.
but it's not actually what the users wanted in the first place.
Absolutely. The document even provides a real-world example using an e-commerce site.
Oh, cool.
Let's say you have a user story like,
Huh?
as a customer, I want to be able to save items to my wish list so that I can purchase them later.
Okay.
You would then break down this user story into concrete tasks for developers,
Right.
such as designing the wishlist interface, creating the functionality to add and remove items, and linking the wishlist to the user's account.
So you're taking that high-level user need and translating it into a series of actionable steps for the development team.
Yeah,
It's like creating a roadmap from the user's perspective to the final product.
precisely. And this focus on user stories is a key part of what makes Agile so effective at delivering products that people actually want to use.
Now, we've talked about user stories, coding principles, and the iterative nature of Agile.
Right.
But how do you actually bring all of this together and start building something tangible?
That's a good question.
The course materials mention prototyping as a key activity in the Agile UX process.
Okay.
What exactly is prototyping, and why is it so important?
Prototyping is all about bringing your ideas to life
Okay.
and testing them before you invest a lot of time and resources in building the final product.
Right.
Imagine building a house without first creating a blueprint or a scale model.
Oh, yeah.
You might end up with a structure that's beautiful but not functional, or functional but not what you envisioned.
So it's like creating a rough draft of your software to test out the concept, flow, and usability.
Exactly. And there are different levels of prototyping.
Okay.
You can start with low-fidelity prototypes, like
Yeah.
sketches on paper or sticky notes, to quickly visualize ideas and get early feedback.
Cool.
Then you can move on to mid-fidelity prototypes,
Wait a
which
minute.
are more interactive and might involve using basic software tools.
Wait, you're telling me that even something as simple as a paper prototype can be valuable in software development?
Absolutely. In the early stages, it's more important to get the core concepts and user flow right than to have a pixel-perfect design.
Yeah.
Paper prototypes allow you to test and iterate quickly, gathering feedback from users and refining your design without investing a lot of time and effort in building something complex.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So you can test out different ideas, get feedback, and make adjustments without having to write a single line of code.
Exactly. And as you refine your design,
Okay.
you can move on to higher fidelity prototypes,
Okay.
which might involve using more sophisticated software tools to create interactive mock-ups that closely resemble the final product.
This is fascinating. It's like you're building a bridge from the initial idea to the finished product,
Yes,
using prototypes as stepping stones to test the waters along the way.
that's a good way to put it.
But how do you know if you're on the right track? How do you evaluate the effectiveness of your prototypes and make sure you're actually creating a good user experience?
That's where user testing comes in. Prototyping and user testing go hand in hand in Agile UX.
Okay. You create a prototype,
Right.
test it with real users, gather feedback,
Hmm.
and then use that feedback to refine your design.
So it's not just about what you think looks good or works well. It's
Right.
about getting real users' perspectives and understanding how they actually interact with your design.
Exactly. And there are different methods for user testing,
Mm.
from simple observation to more structured usability tests.
Right.
These materials even mention Nielsen's 10 usability heuristics, which are like a set of guidelines for evaluating designs and ensuring that they're user-friendly.
It sounds like Agile UX is all about embracing this iterative process of designing, prototyping, testing, and refining, constantly incorporating feedback and making adjustments along the way.
Hmm.
It's not about getting everything perfect on the first try.
Yeah,
It's about constantly learning and improving.
you got it. Agile embraces the idea that perfection is an ongoing journey, not a destination. Yeah.
And this constant evolution and adaptation are what make it so effective in today's fast-paced, ever-changing world.
This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive into the world of agile design and UX so far. We've covered a lot of ground, from the core principles of agile methodologies
Right.
to the importance of user stories,
Mm.
the power of prototyping,
Yes.
and the role of testing and creating exceptional user experiences.
Absolutely.
But there's still so much more to explore.
Absolutely. We've only just scratched the surface of this fascinating field. In our next segment, we'll delve deeper into specific Agile frameworks,
Okay.
testing methodologies, and the evolving landscape of UX design in the age of AI.
So as we wrap up part one of this deep dive, here's something for you to ponder. We've talked about how agile methodologies have revolutionized software development.
Right.
But what about other industries? Can agile principles be applied to fields like healthcare, education, or even government?
Mm.
We'll explore these intriguing possibilities in part two.
That's a really thought-provoking question. I think there's a lot of potential for Agile principles to be applied in other fields. Imagine a hospital using Agile methodologies to improve patient care, or a school using it to personalize education. It's all about embracing flexibility, collaboration, and continuous improvement.
I love that idea. Okay, so we've established that Agile is pretty awesome for software development, but how does it actually play out in the real world? The course materials mention a bunch of different Agile testing methods. Can you walk me through some of the highlights?
Of course, we already touched on test-driven development, or TDD, where you write the test before the code. But there's another intriguing method called acceptance test-driven development, or ATDD.
Okay, so we're adding another layer to the testing cake.
Mhm.
How is ATDD different from TDD?
Well, with ATDD, it's all about collaboration between developers, testers, and even the business stakeholders.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They get together and define the acceptance criteria for a user story, basically outlining exactly what done looks like.
So it's like setting clear expectations from the start, ensuring that everyone is on the same page about what success looks like.
Precisely. It prevents those awkward situations where developers think they've finished a feature, but it doesn't actually meet the needs of the users or align with the overall business goals.
And speaking of ensuring that everyone understands what's going on, the materials also mention something called behavior-driven development, or BDD.
Yeah,
Is this another testing method?
it is. And it takes that collaboration aspect even further.
Okay.
BDD uses a more natural language format to write tests, making them easy for non-technical people to understand. It's like bridging the gap between tech jargon and plain English.
That's brilliant. It's like having a universal translator for software development, ensuring that everyone can contribute to the conversation, regardless of their technical expertise.
Exactly. And the shared understanding is crucial in Agile, where everyone works together towards a common goal. Now, we can't talk about Agile testing without mentioning continuous integration, or CI.
Okay, I've heard that term thrown around a lot in tech circles. But what does it actually mean?
Imagine a group of chefs working on a complex dish. With CI, each chef would constantly be adding their ingredients and checking to see if the flavors are blending well. In software development, it's about integrating code changes frequently, sometimes even multiple times a day. Each change triggers automated tests to ensure that everything is still working as expected.
So it's like having a built-in quality control system that constantly checks for errors and ensures that everything integrates smoothly.
Exactly. It helps avoid those nightmare scenarios where you spend hours trying to merge code changes, only to discover that something has broken along the way.
Makes sense. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about code quality. The source material mentions something called code smells. That doesn't sound very pleasant. What exactly are we talking about here?
Think of code smells as those subtle signs that something might be off with your code. It's not necessarily a bug, but rather an indication that something could be improved or restructured to enhance readability, maintainability, or overall quality.
Okay, so it's like that faint, musty smell in your attic.
Yeah,
It might not be a major issue, but it's definitely a sign that you should investigate and address the underlying problem before it turns into something bigger.
exactly. A common code smell is duplicated code. Imagine you're writing a recipe, and you copy and paste the same instructions for chopping onions in multiple places. If you later realize you need to adjust how you chop the onions, you'll have to make that change in multiple places.
Ugh, that sounds tedious and error-prone.
Exactly. And that's where the solid principles we discussed earlier come in. They can help you avoid these code smells in the first place.
Okay.
For instance, the single responsibility principle would suggest creating a separate function for chopping onions that can be reused throughout your code,
Right.
reducing duplication and making it easier to maintain. So it's not just about making your code look pretty. It's about creating a structure that is efficient, adaptable, and less prone to those pesky code smells. Kind of like building a house with solid foundations and well-organized rooms.
Precisely. Now, speaking of improving your code, the course materials highlight the importance of refactoring as a core practice in Agile development.
Okay, I've heard that term before, but I'm not entirely sure what it means. Is it like cleaning up your code and making it look nicer?
It's more than just making it look pretty. It's about improving the internal structure of your code without changing its external behavior. Think of it like renovating your house. You might rearrange the furniture, repaint the walls, and update the fixtures, but the house itself still serves the same purpose.
So you're basically optimizing the code under the hood to make it more efficient and easier to work with without changing the overall functionality.
Exactly. And it's an ongoing process in Agile.
Okay.
As you add new features and modify existing ones, you're constantly looking for ways to improve the code and keep it clean, organized, and adaptable. It sounds like a never-ending spring cleaning for your code. But I can see how this constant attention to detail would pay off in the long run, leading to a more robust and maintainable product.
Absolutely. And speaking of robustness and maintainability, let's circle back to that concept of emotional design that we discussed earlier. It seems like there's a strong connection between emotional design and the overall user experience, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. We talked about how emotional design is all about evoking positive feelings in users. And if a product makes you feel good to use, you're more likely to stick with it, right?
Precisely. The materials delve into the specifics of what makes good UX, highlighting both the usefulness and emotional impact aspects.
Yeah.
They even mention specific UX measures and targets that designers can use to evaluate their work.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not just a matter of subjective opinions. There are actual ways to measure the effectiveness of UX design. What kind of measures are we talking about?
They mention things like task success rate,
Okay.
basically how often users can complete a task without getting stuck. Right.
Then there's error rate,
Yeah.
which tracks how often users make mistakes. And of course, there are user satisfaction metrics like Net Promoter Score, NPS, and Customer Satisfaction Score, CSAT,
Right.
which capture how happy users are with the overall experience.
It's fascinating how you can quantify something as seemingly subjective as user experience. It takes the guesswork out of design and allows you to make data-driven decisions about what works and what doesn't.
Exactly. And by setting clear UX targets for these metrics, designers can constantly improve their designs and ensure they are meeting user needs in a measurable way. Speaking of measuring and evaluating, these materials also touch on Jacob Nielsen's 10 usability heuristics,
Right.
which are like a checklist for good UX design.
Yes, we mentioned those earlier. But can you remind me what those heuristics cover? They're basically a set of best practices for creating user-friendly interfaces, right? Right. They cover everything from the visibility of system status, meaning users should always know what's going on, to error prevention, which is all about designing interfaces that minimize the chance of users making mistakes. They even cover things like consistency and standards,
Okay.
ensuring that your design follows established conventions and avoids confusing users with unconventional layouts or interactions.
It sounds like these heuristics provide a solid foundation for creating interfaces that are intuitive, easy to use, and enjoyable to interact with.
Exactly. And they're incredibly valuable for UX designers, especially those new to the field. These heuristics can help identify potential usability issues and provide guidance for creating interfaces that are user-centered and effective. Speaking of user-centered design, let's revisit the concept of prototyping. I'm still fascinated by how something as simple as a paper prototype can be so valuable in the design process.
Me too. It seems counterintuitive that something so low-tech could play such a crucial role in developing cutting-edge software.
It's all about testing and iterating quickly. These materials highlight the various benefits of using physical mockups in design.
Okay.
You can literally see your ideas in 3 dimensions, which helps check aesthetics and ergonomics.
Right.
It also allows you to test usability and functionality in a tangible way, which is much more engaging than staring at a screen.
I can imagine that getting your hands on a physical prototype would spark all sorts of insights and ideas that you might miss when working solely in the digital realm.
Absolutely. And it's a fantastic way to facilitate communication and collaboration among team members and stakeholders. Imagine gathering around a table and interacting with a physical model. It's much easier to give feedback, suggest improvements, and get everyone on the same page compared to just looking at diagrams or presentations.
It sounds like physical mockups inject a dose of real-world tangibility into the design process, bridging the gap between abstract ideas and the concrete experience of using a product.
Precisely. And this emphasis on real-world feedback is a key part of what makes Agile so effective. It's not about guessing what users want. It's about getting their input every step of the way. Now, speaking of getting things right, the materials go into more detail about the Liskov substitution principle, or LSP, one of those solid principles we talked about earlier.
Oh yes, the one that sounded like a tongue twister. Refresh my memory on what that one was all about.
It's all about ensuring that objects of a subclass can be substituted for objects of a superclass without causing any hiccups in your program. Think of it like this. You have a standard light bulb socket. You should be able to screw in different types of light bulbs, LED, incandescent, CFL, without short-circuiting the entire electrical system.
Okay, that's a much clearer explanation. So it's about making sure that your code can handle variations without breaking down.
Exactly. And it ties into those concepts of robustness and maintainability that we've been discussing. The LSP helps ensure that your code behaves as expected, even when dealing with different types of objects.
Now, we've talked a lot about Agile in general, but the source material also makes a distinction between Agile and Scrum. Are those not the same thing?
That's a common misconception. Agile is more of a philosophy, a set of values and principles that guide software development.
Oh,
Scrum, on the other hand, is a specific framework within Agile that provides a more structured and prescriptive approach to putting those principles into action.
so it's like Agile is the overarching philosophy, and Scrum is one of the specific tools you can use to implement it.
Exactly. They both emphasize iterative and incremental development, customer collaboration, and continuous improvement. But Scrum lays out a more defined structure with roles, ceremonies, and artifacts.
Okay.
It's a popular choice for teams looking for a more prescriptive Agile framework.
That makes sense. It's like Agile is the general concept of cooking delicious food, and Scrum is a specific recipe that tells you exactly what ingredients to use and how to combine them.
I like that analogy. And just like there are many different recipes for cooking, there are different Agile frameworks besides Scrum, each with its own unique approach and set of practices.
This is fascinating. It's like opening a door to a whole new world of possibilities for software development.
It is, and this exploration of Agile methodologies highlights the importance of choosing the right tools and approaches for your specific needs and context. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. It's all about finding what works best for your team and your project.
Okay, so we've got this spectrum from Agile as a broad philosophy to Scrum as a specific framework. But at the heart of it all seems to be this emphasis on user-centered design. And speaking of understanding users, the source material goes into some detail about different types of UX evaluation data. Can you break that down for me?
Absolutely. When it comes to understanding how users experience your product, there are 2 main types of data: quantitative and qualitative.
Okay, those terms sound familiar from my research days.
Yeah.
Quantitative is all about numbers, right? Like how many users clicked on a button or how long they spent on a certain page.
Precisely. It's about collecting hard data that you can measure and analyze statistically. Qualitative data, on the other hand, is more about understanding the why behind the numbers. It's about gathering insights into users' thoughts, feelings, and motivations.
So it's like quantitative data tells you what users are doing, while qualitative data helps you understand why they're doing it.
Exactly. Think of it like this. If you're analyzing website traffic, Quantitative data would tell you how many people visited a particular page, while qualitative data might come from user interviews or surveys,
Okay.
where you ask users about their experience on that page and what they were trying to achieve.
Ah, so it's about getting the full picture, the numbers and the story behind the numbers.
Precisely. And both types of data are valuable for UX evaluation. They provide different perspectives and insights that can help you create truly user-centered products.
This is making me think about how UX design fits into the broader world of design. The materials seem to suggest that UX is distinct from other design disciplines. Can you elaborate on that?
You're right. UX design is often lumped in with other fields like product design, user interface, UI design, and even graphic design. But there are some key distinctions. UX design is specifically focused on the user's overall experience with a product or service.
Okay.
It's about ensuring that the product is not only aesthetically pleasing, but also easy to use, efficient, and enjoyable to interact with.
So it's like UX design is the architect who designs the entire experience, while UI design is the interior designer who focuses on the look and feel of specific elements.
That's a great analogy. And while those roles often overlap, UX designers take a more holistic approach, considering all aspects of the user's journey, from their initial impressions to their long-term engagement with a product.
Okay, that clarifies things.
Yeah.
Now, going back to the world of software development, the materials talk about how Agile UX and Agile software engineering work together. Can you explain how these two approaches intertwine?
Think of it like this. Agile software engineering is the engine that drives the development process, ensuring that the software is built efficiently and effectively. Agile UX, on the other hand, is the steering wheel, guiding the development in a direction that aligns with user needs and creates a positive user experience.
So it's like a perfectly synchronized dance between the technical aspects of building software and the human-centered approach of designing for user needs.
Exactly. And this collaboration is essential for creating successful products in today's fast-paced market. Traditional software development often siloed design and development, which could lead to products that were technically sound but frustrating to use.
Right.
Agile UX breaks down those silos, fostering collaboration and communication between designers and developers throughout the entire process.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
By working together, designers and developers can ensure that the product not only functions flawlessly, but also delights users and meets their needs in a way that feels intuitive and enjoyable.
Precisely. It's about creating a seamless and harmonious experience for the user, where the technical and the human elements work together in perfect synergy.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey so far. We've explored the core principles of Agile, the nuances of user stories and prototyping, the importance of testing, and the crucial interplay between design and development.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see how all these pieces fit together to create a truly user-centered approach to software development.
Right.
But I'm curious, what about other industries? Can these Agile principles be applied beyond the realm of software?
That's a great question. And while agile methodologies originated in the software development world, they are increasingly being adopted in other fields. Imagine a hospital using agile principles to improve patient care.
Oh, interesting.
They could break down complex procedures into smaller, more manageable steps, constantly gather feedback from patients and staff, and iterate on their processes to improve efficiency and patient satisfaction.
That's a fascinating thought. It seems like any field that involves complex processes, constant change, and a focus on delivering value could benefit from Agile principles.
Exactly. The core values of agile collaboration, flexibility, continuous improvement, and customer focus are applicable in a wide range of contexts.
Well, this has been a mind-expanding exploration of Agile design and UX, but we're not done yet. In our next segment, we'll delve deeper into specific Agile testing methodologies, explore how Agile principles are evolving to address the challenges of AI, and discuss the future of UX design in an increasingly digital world. Stay tuned.
It's amazing to think how Agile has transcended its software development roots and is now influencing fields like healthcare and education. This adaptability speaks volumes about its core principles.
It really does. It's like those universal tools you can use for all sorts of tasks. Speaking of tools, the source material delves into a few more Agile testing methodologies. We already touched on TDD and ATDD. What other testing techniques are out there?
Well, there's a method called exploratory testing, which is quite interesting. It's less about following a strict script and more about letting testers use their intuition and creativity to uncover potential issues.
So it's less like following a recipe and more like experimenting in the kitchen to see what delicious creations you can whip up.
Exactly. It's about exploring the software, trying different scenarios, and thinking outside the box to find those hidden bugs or usability issues that might not be caught by more structured testing methods.
That sounds like a fun way to approach testing.
Yeah.
It's like being a detective, searching for clues and piecing together the puzzle of how the software behaves in different situations.
And it's a valuable complement to those more structured approaches like TDD and ATDD. It adds a human element to the testing process, allowing testers to leverage their experience and intuition to uncover issues that might otherwise slip through the cracks.
Now, speaking of human elements, we've been talking a lot about how Agile methodologies prioritize the user experience. But how do we ensure that this user-centric approach remains relevant as technology continues to evolve? The rise of AI, for instance, presents both opportunities and challenges for UX design.
That's a crucial point. As AI becomes more integrated into our lives, UX designers need to adapt and consider how to create seamless and ethical experiences with these intelligent systems.
What kind of challenges are we talking about specifically?
Well, one challenge is ensuring transparency and explainability. As AI algorithms make decisions, users need to understand how those decisions are being made and have confidence in the process. Otherwise, it can lead to mistrust and skepticism.
That makes sense. It's like if you went to a doctor and they prescribed you a medication without explaining why or how it works,
Yeah,
you'd probably feel uneasy about taking it, right?
exactly. So UX designers need to find ways to make AI systems more transparent, providing insights into how they work and giving users a sense of control over their interactions.
Transparency is key in building trust, especially when dealing with something as complex as AI. What other challenges are there?
Another important challenge is designing for inclusivity. AI systems are trained on vast data sets, which can reflect existing biases in society. If we're not careful, we could end up creating AI-powered products that perpetuate these biases, leading to unfair or discriminatory outcomes.
That's a really important point. It's like if you trained a facial recognition system using only images of people with a certain skin tone, it might struggle to accurately recognize people with different skin tones, leading to all sorts of problems.
Exactly. So UX designers need to be mindful of these potential biases and work to create AI-powered products that are inclusive and equitable for everyone.
It sounds like designing for AI requires a whole new set of considerations and ethical frameworks. It's not just about creating a beautiful interface anymore. It's about understanding the complexities of AI systems and ensuring that they're used responsibly and ethically.
Absolutely. And as AI continues to evolve, UX designers will play a critical role in shaping how these technologies are integrated into our lives, ensuring that they enhance our experiences rather than detract from them.
Now, speaking of shaping the future, let's revisit those solid principles we discussed earlier. They seem like timeless guidelines for good software design, but do you think they will remain relevant as technology continues to evolve?
I think the principles themselves will remain relevant, but how we apply them might evolve. Remember, these principles are all about creating code that is modular, reusable, maintainable, and adaptable qualities that are essential for any software project, regardless of the specific technologies being used.
So it's like those fundamental principles of physics or mathematics. They remain constant even as our understanding of the universe expands.
Exactly. But just as our understanding of physics and math has deepened over time, we might find new and innovative ways to apply these solid principles as technology advances.
It's fascinating to think about how these principles might be adapted to new paradigms like quantum computing or bio-inspired computing.
It is, and that's what makes this field so exciting. It's constantly evolving, pushing the boundaries of what's possible, and challenging us to find new and innovative ways to solve problems.
Speaking of problem solving, the source material highlights the importance of clearly defining user needs as a first step in the Agile process. They talk about using user stories to capture those needs in a concise and actionable way. Can you remind me what makes user stories so effective?
User stories are all about shifting the focus from technical requirements to human needs. Instead of getting bogged down in the details of how something will be built, you start by defining who the user is, what they want to achieve, and why it's important to them.
It's like putting yourself in the user's shoes and seeing the product from their perspective. It humanizes the development process.
Exactly. And it helps avoid situations where developers build something amazing that's not actually what the users need or want. By starting with the user story, you ensure that everyone is aligned on the ultimate goal, creating a product that solves a real problem for real people.
It's a great way to bridge the gap between technical jargon and human needs, ensuring that everyone involved in the project, from developers to designers to stakeholders, understands the why behind the what.
Precisely. And this focus on understanding user needs is a core principle of Agile UX. It's about designing with empathy, putting yourself in the user's place, and creating experiences that are not only functional, but also delightful and meaningful.
Now, speaking of delightful experiences, we've talked a lot about prototyping as a key activity in Agile UX. But what happens after you've created a prototype and tested it with users? How do you take that feedback and turn it into actionable improvements?
That's where the iterative nature of Agile really shines. You take that feedback, analyze it, and then use it to refine your design. It's a continuous cycle of design, prototype, test, refine, and repeat.
So it's not about getting everything perfect on the first try. It's about embracing the idea of continuous improvement. Each iteration brings you closer to a product that truly meets user needs.
Exactly. And this iterative process is a key part of what makes Agile so effective. It allows you to adapt to changing requirements, incorporate new information, and continuously improve the product based on real-world feedback.
It's like sculpting a piece of art. You start with a rough block of marble and then chip away at it, bit by bit, until you reveal the masterpiece within. Each iteration refines the form, bringing you closer to the perfect expression of your vision.
I love that analogy. And just like sculpting Agile UX is a process of discovery and refinement. You start with an idea, explore it through prototyping and testing, and then shape it into a product that is both beautiful and functional.
Well, this deep dive has taken us on an incredible journey through the world of Agile design and UX. We've explored the core principles of Agile methodologies, delved into the nuances of user stories, prototyping and testing, and even pondered the ethical considerations of designing for AI. It's been an eye-opening experience.
It certainly has, and I hope you've come away with a deeper appreciation for the power of Agile methodologies and the importance of user-centered design in creating products that not only meet user needs, but also delight and inspire.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I'd like to leave our listeners with one final thought. We've talked about how Agile has revolutionized the world of software development, but its principles, collaboration, flexibility, continuous improvement, and customer focus have the potential to transform any field.
I completely agree. So as you go about your day, think about how you might apply these Agile principles to your own work, your personal life, or even to tackling those big, complex challenges facing our world. The possibilities are endless.